Welcome in to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. I am excited for today's show, folks. Let me tell you why. You know, I was sitting back looking at my paranormal TV schedule and thinking to myself, I'm looking for something new. And let's face it, here's the reality of the paranormal TV landscape. And I'm going to speak frankly to you right now. When we look at our ratings, it seems like the paranormal investigation TV show has run its course. And I say that because when you look at the ratings, they're falling for paranormal TV investigation shows. Now, I have good friends that are on these shows. But the fact of the matter remains, when you look at them, they're starting to slide a bit. And the networks are trying other formats. They're trying new things. My guests today are on one of those shows that's trying new things. And initially, when I tuned into the Legion of Exorcists, I was intrigued because I have friends as well that are exorcists. And one of them's on the show today. And so I was very, very intrigued. I wanted to tune in and I wanted to see this show. And I wanted to see exactly what direction Eli Roth was going to take this show, because Eli Roth is a very well-known filmmaker who produces some very well-known horror movies, and what direction we were going to take this. Because let's face it, the field of exorcism is really not one for entertainment, is it? But yet we still need to pull people in, and we need to have an entertaining show. So how do we balance this, and how do we do this so that we have an entertaining show, yet we put forward a lesson and in good and evil and what it is exactly we need to do in this field of the paranormal? Well, I was pleasantly surprised when I sat down and I watched the 6 episodes of the Legion of Exorcists, and that we not only got the lessons we needed to get in what it is we do, but I was also pleasantly entertained. So I'm going to bring on, without further ado, and kind of get an introduction to our 3 guests today. My guests from the Legion of Exorcists today, we've got Minister Scott Jonson, we've got Bishop Rita Strugala, and we've got the Reverend Shawn Wittington today. So, folks, I want to say hello to you today, Bishop Rita, Minister Scott, and Reverend Shawn. How are you today?
Awesome.
Doing great.
Hanging in there.
I'm going to start out slow, and then we'll build in, because first of all, I want to congratulate all 3 of you on a great season. And thank you so much for putting yourselves out there, because I know that it couldn't be easy. The scrutiny factor had to be at an all-time high to put yourselves out for this show. Now, exorcists have been featured on different paranormal investigation programs, just for an exorcism segment or an exorcism in a program in previous shows. And I know that there's a bit of scrutiny when that comes up. But then now it's an entire series based on that. And there's reenactment in there too. So now we're pushing the factor even higher, the scrutiny factor even higher. I'm going to start with Minister Scott. Did you have trepidations coming into this program of how it would be made, and what quelled those trepidations to get you to participate?
Certainly. I am a full-time minister, pastor of a church here in Ohio. So I had to get approval. The church had to, kind of agree on, like, can I do this? And I wouldn't have done it had they not agreed. And they've been very supportive. But the branch of Christianity I am a part of typically puts their head in the sand when it comes to spiritual warfare and exorcism and demonic possession. So I have gotten a lot of calls from church leaders I don't know, who have nothing better to do than tell me I'm a liar, a charlatan, apostate, somebody trying to make my name be famous and all that. So there was a lot of trepidation. And also, I didn't want my wife or kid to be, in any way accessible through this. So, but really once after the process during COVID, it kind of started before COVID, and the talking and the interviews and stuff, I felt this was going to be a really good thing. I was very theologically focused, which is very different than any of the other shows. And that's what made me feel a lot more comfortable. But the reenactments also made me uncomfortable, and the editing, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to make me say?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how that works. And for the most part, for my part, I was pretty satisfied with it. So overall, I think it went pretty well.
Bishop Rita, what was it that quelled your trepidation about doing the show, and what made you come on board?
Well, for me, it was a bit different than that. I am very much spirit-led in what I do, and I've always had these gifts, and they've gotten stronger. I have had several different shows that have talked about doing something for years. And every time I would ask my guides, am I supposed to do this? Do you want me to talk to them? It was no. So when this one came up, I think they've been trying to get in touch with me for about 3 months. And I'd gotten another email, and I thought, what is with this? And so I actually asked my guides, I was expecting a no. Do I need to speak to these people? And I heard yes. And I thought, wow, that's different. And I was trying to figure out, and I was asking them, why? Why do this? Why put yourself out there? Why do you want me to do this? I mean, I don't want people to be afraid to come to me because they've seen me on TV. They're afraid I'm going to share their story or, anything like that. I was really kind of against the whole thing, and I would just heard to try it, to do it. And I finally, even after I did the series, see, my big thing was too, are they going to take the story and totally munch it up into something that it's not? Is there going to be any truth left to it when it comes out? That kind of thing. I was really concerned about that. And I was told by the production company and everything that they were going to stick as close as they could to the actual story. Of course, there would have to be, some dramatic stuff put in here, there, whatever it was, but that the story itself would basically be what we actually lived. And so I was okay with that. And I was more okay with it just because, my guides had said that I was needing to do this. And I finally, right before I was ready to go out there to start shooting, I asked one more time, why do I need to do this? And I heard very clearly, because it is time that this gets out there. People need to know. There's so much evil in the world. People need to know. And that was good enough for me. And that's when I decided, all right, that's what I'm going to do.
All right. Reverend Shawn, I want to thank you for being on the program yet again and coming back to the program, and welcome back. What was it that quelled your trepidation and made you decide that this was for you, that you wanted to be part of the Legion of Exorcists?
It's a little bit of, my story is a little bit different, but there's a lot of the same feelings that both Scott and Rita had when the first gentleman from the production company reached out to me, and this goes way back to, like Scott, before the pandemic. I thought he wasn't legit. I really thought he was just pulling my leg, because I get a lot of calls like that, like, Joe Blow from my Atlanta production company, we want to do a Exorcist 4. But then after talking to him for a little bit and realizing that he was legit, I felt a lot like Rita did. I started getting messages and knowing that God basically laid this in my lap, and he was the real show creator that you don't see on in the credits at the end of the show. But and then everything fell into place, and I realized, well, I just got to let go, let God, and trust these people. And every time I had a good interview and I got bumped up the chain of command to the person above that previous gentleman or woman, I got deeper and deeper into listening to what their plan was for the show, and it was like unlike anything I had ever been presented with or approached with before. So I just had to trust them, let go, let God, and trust them, and they came through. I think they did regardless of what happens from this point, whether it goes to a season 2. And I am going to go ahead and speak for the rest of the cast in saying, I know we all put our blood, sweat, and tears literally into this show,
yep.
And I know we're all really proud of the work, and that's all that really matters. But I get these phone calls all the time from people saying, they introduce themselves. They say, listen, you don't know me, but I've seen the show. I watched you. I listened to your stories. And what you've done for me was I've drifted from my faith. And what this has done was made me want to work on strengthening my faith again and come back to God. So I want to thank you for that. It's, put a fork in me. I'm done.
Amen.
Interesting. Before we go any further, because I have some interesting questions to ask about the actual shooting of the show. Nothing too controversial, but interesting questions nonetheless. Let's get a sense of who you are and where you're from. Reverend Shawn, I know, let's recap for people who maybe haven't heard past episodes with you. We'll start with you first. Your ministry in Las Vegas. Go ahead and tell people a little bit about your ministry.
Well, when I didn't know any of these people that I met on the show, my fellow cast members. I've heard of a couple of them, but I'd never met or worked with any of them. And I was ordained through a Christian university, and I was a member of a Exorcist Association. So I was an ordained exorcism deliverance minister, advanced practice, and doing that type of work here in Las Vegas. But my ghost busting, ghost hunting background goes back to probably the age of 10. So my wife and I have ghostbegone.biz out here. And it's just the two of us, just a husband and wife, 2-man team. And I'm in the seminary now. I've turned the page on all of that because of this show, and I met Bishop James Long on the show. And one day after we'd all worked together for a couple of weeks, I'm in one of the trailers. I think it must have been lunch or a break or something. I'm in there relaxing, and he came walking in, and he had a silly look on his face. And he's kind of funny looking anyway, but he had this extra silly look on his face. And I thought, he's up to something. What's going on? Well, when I was a little kid, my mother used to always ask me, the most devoutly religious person I knew was my mother. May she rest in peace. But she used to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I used to dumb kid stuff like I want to be a cop or a policeman or a pro football player, Spider-Man. And she said, I think you should be a priest. And my whole life, I thought that was the craziest thing she would ever say to me. And she's saying it to me all the time. Here he comes walking and he says, listen, I want you to know that I know you have a pure heart, and I think you would make a great priest. If you've ever thought about going into the seminary, look into the USOCC, my church, and I can get you into the seminary if you're interested. You got to go in front of the Council of Bishops, but I think I can get you in. Well, the whole time he's saying that to me, my mother's face is over his face, and her voice is coming through his mouth, and I just knew right then, this is why I was here. This was all planned ahead of time for me to be sitting in this trailer being offered to get into the Catholic seminary. And so I've turned the page on all that. Now I'm just seminarian Shawn, and hopefully, God willing, with his help, I'll make it to the priesthood. And that's my story.
That's amazing. That's great. Minister Scott, tell us, you've told us a little bit already about your church. Tell us a little bit more about your ministry.
Well, I've only been doing this about 10-ish, 11 years. Everybody on this show will tell you, none of us willingly went down this path, but before I was a Christian, I was an atheist, but had a lot of paranormal experiences. And then I got involved in drugs and alcohol, became an addict and all that stuff. And at the age of 19, I was going to end my life. And I called out to every god and goddess I could think of, but not Jesus, because all the Jesus people I met were jerks and I hated them. But the next morning, Jesus answered. And so I enrolled in, Bible college, and I met my wife there, and I have been at my current church. This is my second church, but I became senior pastor of this church at 26 years old. I don't know why they let me do that. I still don't know why they let me do what I do here, but I have an awesome family. I have an amazing wife, beautiful wife, amazing kids that I'm proud of. And this is just a small fraction of what I do. I'm kind of like Shawn, all this being on the show was intimidating, but it has opened up so many conversations with people that I never would have met about Jesus and the power of God and how much he loves them. And as far as I'm concerned, like Shawn said, to quote the great Shawn, stick a fork in me, I'm done, And so I'll continue to, fight the battles that God puts before me, and I'll continue to share the gospel with people. And that's my life. That's what I live for.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. Bishop Rita, let's talk a little bit about your ministry and a little bit about your church and how you came about it.
All right. Well, when I was 16, I actually started my first paranormal group, and what had transpired up to that point was when I was 5, I had a very traumatic paranormal experience to me. But what it did was it made me wonder, how do things talk that don't have a voice box? How does this stuff happen? My parents were always the no nonsense. This stuff did not exist. And so they never let us watch any ghost shows or anything like that. And at that time, the only thing that was really out there was, Casper the Friendly Ghost and books on Hans Holzer. So I read everything I could find on the subject. And by the time I was 16, I'd started my own group. And by the time I was 20, we were actually out there helping people, cleansing properties and things like that. I just kept learning more as I went along, kind of thing, and clearing land and stuff like that. In 2012, one of the cases that I worked actually came to the attention of an exorcist bishop named James Goodwin, who, God bless his soul, has passed over now, from Russell, Tennessee. And I had done a case, and it was all for attention. And trust me, he was full of demons. Saw half of one come out of him, half of one.
Oh,
the other
wow.
part stayed in it. Yeah, it was crazy. And he was doing all this for his entertainment. And it was making me angry. And I've since learned that when I know someone has a possession, it makes me angry. I'm not angry with that person. I am angry with that demon in there. And that's how it affects me. But at that time, I knew he did, and he wasn't going to do a thing about it. Didn't want to do a thing about it. So I had left. I'd done what I could, and I knew nothing was going to work on a cleansing and that, because the guy wasn't serious and had no intention of ever changing. And so I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of that. I went on with my life. Well, a few weeks later, I got this phone call from James Goodwin, who had Bishop Goodwin had apparently the guy had contacted him, and he had, from what I could understand, he had ordered or asked for 3 or 4 other paranormal teams out there and used them the same way, and said, "Oh, well, nobody will help me." Well, he was doing the same thing with the bishop. And I just told him straight out what happened and that he was wasting his time. Feel free to do whatever he thought he needed to do. But, it was ridiculous. And the next day he said, would you mind writing up exactly what happened and sending it to me this weekend? And I said, sure. So I did. I sat down, documented everything we did, everything that he said, everything that happened. And I got a call back from him on Monday and said, I want to thank you. I really want to thank you for, he said, you were extremely thorough on this. He said, I'm wondering if you would consider being my investigator when people call me and say that they have, demonic things going on. Would you mind going in there and doing just what you did, documenting this case? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, okay, sure, I can do that. I've been doing paranormal for, 30 something years at that point. It's like, yeah, I can do that. I wasn't real comfortable with it because I really didn't want to get that close to the darkness.
Yeah.
But I knew he needed somebody in that. And so I did it. And then what was it? 2014, ended up having somebody go into possession right in front of me.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually put in my worst nightmare. This is what I'd been trying so hard to stay away from. Honestly, the Lord had tried for over a year to convince me this is the direction he wanted me to go. And I knew it. I could feel it. But I felt like there's a snowball at the top of the hill and it was coming down and it was fixing to smack me. And I wanted nothing to do with it. And I kept saying, please, Lord, no, I don't want to do this. He was so patient with me, so patient. And every time we had a case, something would happen. And at the end, there was no other explanation for it. And I would just hear, see, I've got your back. And I think, oh, Lord, I still don't want to do this. And it went on at this last one that happened where that he literally put that in front of me. I know he did because he knew I would never step into it on my own.
Oh, wow.
He put that in front of me, and I had the choice to either walk away, not help them, or at least try.
Yeah.
And I did. And at the end of that night, it was the most epic thing I've ever had happen. And I wish they had shown it on the show. All of this got cut out, every bit of it. And at the end of the show, there were these unbelievable storms that kept coming up every time we'd go in and cleanse the house, or when this exorcism was going on. And the very minute it left, everything stopped. The rain stopped, the thunder stopped, lightning stopped, wind stopped. And I'm like, what is going on? We get back up to the place where the original thing happened 30 years prior. And I was having everybody, this is after the exorcism and everything, going to have everybody just take and detox, put all the negative stuff that we had accumulated into the ground, into the earth, and fill ourselves with the white light from God. And everybody was feeling so much better. This storm, as we were headed to that place, come up again. And I'm like, no, Lord, please not again. And all I could see the rain, the wind was just crazy. And all I could think was, please don't strike us with lightning, Lord, please don't strike us. That's all I could think. I didn't care if I get wet. I don't care. Just please don't strike me with lightning. We get up there and I get them in this medicine circle and have everybody start to detox. Mind you, this storm is now raging all around us. And all I'm concentrating on is getting the negativity out of these people. I don't want to send them home like that.
Yeah.
And when that happened and I had everybody fill up with the white light and everybody felt so good. It was amazing. And all of a sudden I looked at James, who was the guy that did our tech for the group. And I said, do you feel that? And about the same time, everybody looked and saw the trees are literally bending over all around us. There's rain everywhere, the lightning and thunder. We look straight up and there's nothing but stars over our circle. That was my defining moment when I finally said, I get it. You've got my back. I'll do it.
That's awesome.
And that's how I ended up. So now fast forward several years after that, I'm with the Celtic Cross Communion International, the Celtic Cross Old Catholic Church. I'm the chief exorcist for them, which is pretty much the whole East Coast. I'm also the chief exorcist for the Confraternity of St. Michael the Archangel and for the Sword of St. Michael.
That is awesome.
That's what I do.
That is awesome. Bishop Rita, I have to ask you this. Why do you suppose that bit that you just told us about was cut out of the show?
I think I'm hoping it was just for an interest of time. Yeah. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I really think these episodes to really, because honestly, we all heard each other's stories as we were being told. So we knew how much was being cut out after we saw the show. This, when it was well done and over with. And we all said, the actual stories were so much scarier and so much more enlightening and so much more awesome than what actually came out because of that interest of time.
Yeah.
And I really think if we could have each person have their 1 hour show, as some of them do, where they could actually hear more of the actual story and get the gist of it. I think it, in my opinion, would just be so, they would understand better and it wouldn't have been so, everything so cut out of it. Because it takes a lot more. I mean, one case of ours is never a half an hour long.
Right.
It can start, 6 months ago kind of thing up till now. And so many things in between make it what it became. And there's no way to tell it. There's no way to get that out there so people appreciate what these poor people went through and what we had to do to resolve it.
Right.
That's just what I think.
I think that's a good point for us to take our break. When we come back, I want to ask Minister Scott, Reverend Shawn, were there things about your cases that maybe they could have expounded on, maybe some things that could have been thrown out there in the cases that you were featured in? I know there were some chilling moments in both your cases, Minister Scott, Reverend Shawn, that when I watched it on TV, I went, whoa, and thought, to me, it seemed like at home, watching as a viewer, I didn't think that there could possibly be more. Maybe there was more. We'll ask when we come back. And then I want to get into some specifics about the actual filming itself. The question that I'll ask that I want you to ponder during the break is this. In a paranormal market where evil is sexy and God is something that we refrain about talking about, did you feel any pressure to maybe throttle back talking about God, or was God on the table and wide open, and did you not feel any pressure whatsoever to throttle that back? I want you to think about that when we are in the break. We're with the Legion of Exorcists today. My guests are Minister Scott Jonson, Bishop Rita Strugala, and Reverend Shawn Wittington. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the filming of the show and exactly what the stakes were. We'll put it that way. When we come back here on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting, this is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. With me are at least part of the cast of the Legion of Exorcists. We have with us Minister Scott Jonson, Bishop Rita Strugala, and Reverend Shawn Wittington. I want to thank all three of you again for being with me today. Before the break, we were talking about getting into the filming of the Legion of Exorcists, and Bishop Rita was telling us before the break about part of her story, and really what seems like a very important part of the story that was left behind. And we're just speculating it was for time, because really there's only a half hour that's left for each individual exorcist story. And when you think about it, with commercials, that's really only about 22 minutes. And when we're talking about, individual story time, and that's not a lot of time. You've got to set up character-wise and everything, what you're going to do for a story. I'm going to go next to Minister Scott here. Do you feel with the stories that you had on the show that you were kind of in the same boat? Was there a particular story that you had this season that you went, man, you know what? There was a lot left on the cutting room floor that probably could have been featured, that would have lent to a more fleshed out story, that something important might have been left on the floor?
Yeah, so my first story they did, I think it was episode 2. That one was pretty good, except they made the mom really mean and crazy up front, but she didn't get that way till the very end. Yeah. So that was the only real problem with that one. The second one I did, if you remember the opening, I think it was episode 4. There's a kid levitating.
Yes.
And they give zero explanation as to why there's a levitating kid in this possessed girl's bedroom. That's the only time he appears. And there was no explanation for that whatsoever. And I kind of was like, well, that's kind of a big cutout. Also, there was a stepfather involved in this. The mom and dad were extremely brave in basically letting me lead them through doing the exorcism via, computer or Skype at that time. Mm-hmm. And they didn't include the stepdad. They didn't include a whole lot of the backstory with the boyfriend and all that stuff. And so, but it was just weird. Okay, there's this random levitating kid, but they didn't tell why. And it was just that's how they opened the show. Mm-hmm. Was the mom you have to see this, and this kid levitating. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But then when they got in the story, there was no explanation. So then I got a lot of emails so were there 2 people possessed? Did it jump? But it was no, that the boyfriend was being controlled by the girlfriend. But I mean, ultimately, I think the actor that portrayed me did as best he could, because Facebook blocked him from contacting me. I didn't even know that he has tried to contact me until a week before, because he was trying to get to know me. So all he went off of was the podcast I've been on, and he watched a few sermons of mine that live stream. So I think given that much or that little, I guess, he did okay. And I didn't have a problem with him. He definitely made me look better. But that second episode was really like, I was like, man, there's a lot of stuff. And then me and my wife were watching, and I could even tell, I was like, we were with her, like Rita's or Sean's or Bishop Long's or Donnie or Rich's stories. I was like, oh man, they cut out this huge part, that would make a whole lot more sense. So I think it was all done in the interest of time. At least, that's what I'm going to hope for anyway. But that's the only one I really felt was odd in mine.
I'm sure. Let me ask you specifically about that fourth episode in the Skype or the over the internet exorcism, if you will. They start to explain why it works, or they get into the deliverance of prayers, and then they stop. It's almost like you're starting to explain why those prayers work, and then we go in a different direction. It's like boom, we're off into a different deal. Could you flesh out for our listeners why it works just as well on Skype? Because I've had other exorcists on the show that have kind of told us why it's just as good, but for you to be on the other end, like you and I on Zoom right now, why it's just as good for you to be on the other end of Zoom as it is to be in person.
Well, so that's the only time that has ever happened to me, and it was because it was such a desperate situation. I typically won't do it over like Zoom and stuff, but the thing about prayer and God, the Holy Trinity is everywhere. I can pray here and it be effective thousands like I can if I'm in person. So at that point it worked. There are some exorcists who make a lot of money by doing Skype video exorcisms. And those are like the real charlatans of this game. And so I didn't want to be associated with that, but I thought that was a cool story because we were coming out of the pandemic and everybody was in this, like, we're all used to talking on Zoom mode. And I thought that would be very relevant to the thing, but personally, I don't prefer to do that. I don't like to do it. And that's the only time I've ever done it. Not say I wouldn't do it again, but it kind of takes away all your instinctual feelings that you have when you're in the moment that God is giving. But kudos to the parents that did the stand-in and did the whole and the things like that, because they were very brave people, because it was a very scary, that the teenage girl that was possessed was very scary and aggressive and violent and horrible. And so they were scared of their own child. So, it worked, and I believe I can make it work, but I just, because prayer is just anywhere. And that's all people don't realize, that when you think of like exorcism is reading scripture and praying. Really, when you boil it down, like that's it. It's not like I have a magical power and, it's Jesus and I'm going to stand in.
We seem to be losing Scott a little bit there. Is anybody else hearing Scott, or is that just me?
I am not hearing Scott.
Hold on a second, sorry.
Nope.
There he is.
All right. There we go. I think we got you back.
I think he's frozen too. And, talking about this kind of stuff, there's going to be, interference, if you know what I mean.
Yes. No, it's not the first time we've ever had interference on a show where we're
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now. There you go, Scott. There you go. Yep.
I don't know. But yeah, it's one of those things I wouldn't recommend, doing. That was also my very first exorcism. So yikes. But, it works just as fine, but I would rather do it in person.
Right. Absolutely. Reverend Shawn, I want to throw the same question to you. There's a couple of scenarios that you deal with in this season that are particularly frightening. I mean, everything from the Black Mist to the episode with Sam, the showdown with Sam, where you actually have an encounter with Jesus. There's some particularly powerful stories there, which to me seem like you can go far beyond 22 minutes, my friend. Tell me, I mean, there had to have been some shortened stories there.
Well, real quick, I know I'll be kicking myself if I don't do this real quick. And
Sure.
I want to give a shout out to Absent Friends, which is demonologist Rich Valdez, Bishop James Long, and Pastor Donnie Williams, the other cast members.
Yep.
I also want to give a shout out to Adam Sampson, Allison Berkeley, and Joseph Freed from Marwar Junction Productions. And I also want to give from the Travel Channel, our director, Brian Knapmiller, a big shout out, and the actor Steve Crawford that played me, because without all of them, none of this would have happened. Me personally, I loved the show. I loved every episode. I loved everybody's stories, and I know that, you know, I told them a lot of stories in all the months that I had many hour and a half, 2 hour Zoom interviews with show creators. Some of them, they just flat out said, that's just way too scary for TV. And some of them said that's a little bit too graphic, a little bit too violent for TV. Some of my stories they couldn't even use, and then some that they were going to use, they were honest with me and said, we're going to have to water this down just a little bit. And you ask about those 2 episodes. There was a lot more violence that happened, especially in the attack on me that. You know, colleagues of mine have discussed it with me a lot, that we all pretty much assumed that I probably died then. And it was just a miracle that, you know, my guardian angel was there and was speaking to me in my ear, telling me, pray, dummy, pray. And me starting to pray and bringing me back out of that. The episode was I was even here at home, very emotional watching the episode about me seeing Jesus, but Jesus in the real story was I actually saw Jesus on the cross after the crucifixion.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't even resemble a man. He basically just resembled a battered, rotting, bloody, dirty piece of meat hanging on a tree. And they said, we don't think we can do that. Not that they didn't want to, but like you mentioned, those were powerful episodes.
Yeah.
And you didn't want, you know, you got to be real careful. I guess the way, I'm not in the TV biz. I guess the way you present that sort of thing, they just had their trepidations about some things. So they had to water down some of my episodes. But I'm really proud of the show. I know that 20 minutes. They also wanted, not only, they felt bad about it too. They had to cram about 12 weeks of filming into 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yes.
To get this series done.
Yes.
And
Wow.
they wanted the episodes to move fast, be as thorough as they could be, but they also wanted the episodes to move fast. So because, you know, the audience attention spans are not what they once were.
They're minute.
And you've got, and so you got to keep their attention, and the story's got to relatively move quick. But if we go to a season 2, who knows, there may be some changes. But me personally, every time a show would air and would be done, I'd send as many emails out and private messages and text messages to everybody that I knew was involved in putting the show together. And I would just say, listen, brilliant job tonight. God bless you. You're on the prayer list. I'm praying for you. I thought tonight's episode was great. But flip side of that coin, there probably could be, you know, some changes made here or there. But even if they didn't make any changes, I really am. I'm a big fan of the show, and I think they did a really good job.
I'm a huge fan too. You know, as I sat and watched at home, and I've sat and rewatched quite a few of the episodes. To me, it moves very quickly. They accomplish that very well. And you're right, and they're right in that the audience's attention span has become minute, but that has been decades in the making. We created our own monster there, in that we started with an MTV generation, and we started with quick cuts and videos, and we fed bite-sized portions and morsels to our audience, and people wanted the quick cuts for decades, and even Generation X fed it to their children. And now we're at a point where people need TikTok-sized, bits and morsels in order to focus, and that's all they can focus on. So you got to give them quick hits, and you got to give them action along with information. And what I feel I liked the most about, and this is where I'm going to transition to the next question now. What I like the most about Legion of Exorcists is that you got your quick hits, your scares, and everything else, but then you also transitioned and gave them the information that they needed as well with it. It wasn't just the sexiness, evil, and the scares that everybody was looking for out of the show, which I guess makes the network happy. And I'm speaking for myself here. I'm not speaking for you three. But in that, you also get the good that you need to put out there as well. This is where the next question comes up. And I'm going to start with you, Bishop Rita. And that's this. At any time during the filming, did you feel like you were ever, because I've sensed this in other shows, that maybe there's a bit of a throttling that, we like the sexiness of putting the evil out there, but maybe you want to throttle the God talk a little bit. Did you ever feel like maybe there was too much God talk, or maybe you should throttle that a little bit on set? Or were you wide open? It was, you talk about what you're going to talk about.
One of the things that I was so impressed with this production crew and with the channel, Travel Channel, was I never, ever felt that I could not say the name of Jesus, Father God. We were encouraged to say what we were feeling and what got us here. How did this happen? How did you find yourself in this position? And I mean, there were times where I called out churches even because I don't feel like they do enough to help. But that's just me. Mm-hmm. But did they ever say I couldn't say anything about that? No, they did not. We were never, to my knowledge, I was never said, hey, could you, dial that back a little bit, or could you, just refer to, your creator kind of thing. Don't give it a name or whatever. There was none of that. And that was one of the things that impressed me so much about this show, was that we were allowed to talk. We were allowed to say what we felt. And it was awesome. I've got to commend them. I was really afraid that when we got in there that we might hear talk like that, mm-hmm. like, kind of dial it back from, Jesus or whatever. There was none of that. To my knowledge, there was none of it. And I am so thankful to them. And because of that, I really enjoyed doing the show.
Minister Scott, there's a moment in the series where you cite that there's a carving that's actually part of a Hebrew character. And at that moment, I know there had to have been one or two TV executives that might cringe a little bit and go, wait a minute, I don't know that we want to put that in the show, because they may think that you might be going after a certain group. But the show is brave enough to put it in there because it actually happened. I mean, it's mm-hmm. an actual thing that happened. And the fact that you cite that a demon can actually use a religion against you, or can use a religious artifact against you. The fact that that's put in the show may, at one point or another, potentially offend one particular group or another. Did you get any pushback from the network on that, or from any network executive, or was it completely hands off on that deal?
Actually, they were the ones that wanted me to delve deeper into what that meant. It was a passing part of my story. So that was their idea, which I appreciate, because I mean, as a guy who took years of Hebrew and Greek, I know this stuff. I work with it every week. Mm-hmm. It's what I do. Mm-hmm. So I don't give it much thought, because most people, their eyes roll back in their head when you start doing biblical languages and stuff like that. Yeah. And they're like, can you not bore me to death? But they included that. And I was really impressed with that. Just like Rita said, and I cannot stress, and I think I speak for the whole group, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, and even those who are not here, this was super Christ-centered.
Yeah.
We were never once said, hey, don't talk about that. In fact, we were invited because, again, that's what makes this show unique and interesting, is that the Exorcist isn't just the sidekick character that comes in at the end for, this obscure guy or gal who just shows up and, God fixes everything. It's like, this is what we live, but also we're people of deep faith in Jesus, and we believe every word of the Bible. And there were times where, when you're on a TV show that feed your story back to you to make it more palatable, because they're smart. Like Brian Knapmiller is an absolute genius at that, and he can do things on the fly. Like my brain is still like 3 days behind by the time he's figured out like a show. And they would feed things back, but all of us were very good at stopping and saying, no, that's not what we believe. If they were to slip up like that, and they were very respectful of that, and that's what stuck in the show. And so our faith was very much encouraged in the filming, and that ultimately confirmed that this is something I wanted to be a part of, because that is, without our faith and without Jesus, there's nothing. There's no source of help for anyone without those things. And so, am I worried about offending other religious groups? No, because I just talk about Jesus. I didn't talk about any other religious groups. I mean, I might tick off a few witches or something, but I mean, who doesn't know it? But but they encouraged us to be a lot, and there was a lot of times that you would find the cast and crew that weren't supposed to be sitting around watching. We're just sitting there in awe, and there were times that we would basically be preaching sermons almost about these experiences and the power of God, and citing Bible verses, and people were just like, sitting there listening. And I thought that was one of the most beautiful things of this show, was that our faith was not only encouraged, it was put on display, because without it, you do not have an exorcist, because there's nothing to exercise if faith is not real and God is not real.
Right.
So I really appreciated that, and I never felt throttled back or asked to deny anything or water things down at all. I was really impressed by that.
Did you catch flack, Scott, for the episode where and I forget the gentleman's name, but the wife, the wife that goes evil at the end? There's the scene where she puts the sage in front of him, but underneath there's the crystals, and there's witchcraft. She's involved in witchcraft at the end. Did you catch flack from witches on that deal with the crystals? And because at one point it said that you say in the episode, that's not part of my toolkit. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not quoting you. Yeah. You paraphrase, that's not part of my toolkit. I don't use that. That's not basically part of my tool set.
Yeah.
And just basically, I guess, inferring that's more of a witchcraft thing. That's more of the occult. That's more of the other side's tool. And I'm putting it kind of nicely there.
You're right.
So did you get flack or did you get emails? Did you get communique from witches from that and basically saying that's not necessarily an evil thing?
I never got any directly. I heard that I got some, but I try and avoid reading all the comments and stuff like that. I haven't got any flack directly, and again, my point is not to offend. My point is to speak truth. And so I'm not trying to, devalue what somebody else believes or whatever, but I mean, it is what it is. Truth is truth, no matter how you slice it. Mm-hmm. So I have not, at least to my knowledge, gotten any, personal threats or, I haven't personally received. The only personal criticism I received is from fellow Christians, which is mind blowing.
Really?
So, but I've heard that there have been rumbles, but again, at the end of the day, I just have to, whatever. We're in a generation where I can say the sky's blue and somebody could say, no, it's purple, and then we all get into an argument. So my goal was not to offend, but to speak the truth. And if I get flack for that, they killed my Lord and Savior. So I'm not any better than him. So whatever.
Mind if I ask you the most ridiculous question in the world? What happens, Scott, if a witch decides to try and put a curse on a minister based on your view of witchcraft, especially on an exorcist?
It depends on the minister. It depends on the minister. I mean, I think the Holy Spirit protects us, ultimately.
Yeah.
But there are some that lack in faith, and there are some that I think maybe God lets through to maybe help them grow in their faith. But hopefully I never find out the answer to that question. So anybody watching, please leave me alone. I don't hate you. I love you. And so does Jesus.
Well, God willing, you never find that out. That's
right.
That's the answer to that. So I want to transition this discussion to the outside world. I mean, and we're all hoping that you guys get a season 2. You know what? I do have one other question when it comes to the show, and that's this. And I want to kind of transition to other religions. Now, we all know there are exorcists in other religions. Would it be now? And as you pointed out, Scott, that this show was very Christ-centric. Would it be something, or would it be an option to open it up to other religions and have exorcists from other religions? And I want to point to Reverend Shawn first. Would it be something that you think would be an option, or do you think that it should stay Christ-centric? Let's go to Reverend Shawn first with your opinion.
That is a great question, and I'm going to go ahead and just tell you a little story about something that they totally cut out. We had people that were brought in as guest appearances for the roundtable sessions in every episode. And one of those was a Messianic Jewish exorcist who we loved, and he never appeared in the show for time again. But I think that might change if we go to a season 2, that they make time for that. But there again, here this Messianic Jewish rabbi believes in Jesus, so I think I personally, and I've been doing this a long time, I personally haven't. I've met a lot of exorcists from different religious belief systems, and the way they go about doing what it is they do to bring closure to cases and expel unclean spirits from homes and property and possessed individuals. But when the smoke clears and when you get down to the nitty-gritty, they all believe in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I haven't met an exorcist yet that doesn't believe that. Are they out there? I'm sure they are. I just haven't met one. But something else a lot of people don't know about this show was we weren't on a set. We were actually filming on location at this beautiful, I've never seen anything like it, beautiful, almost 200-year-old Catholic church up on a hill above old Pasadena. And so you couldn't not have God and Jesus all around you the whole time you're there doing the project, because you're smack dab in this church with just this, I never really sat down with the other cast members and asked them what they saw and felt in this place. But me personally, I was seeing a lot of angelic beings and just felt the Holy Spirit all over that place, and not so Holy Spirits around, mainly on the outside of the place. But you're going to have a history like that, spiritual history like that, with a place like that. But it was everywhere. The show couldn't have been, not had that be the main focus and the main theme of the show, that we do what we do because God and Jesus are there helping us, using us as conduits and vessels to come through and do what we do. So, but yeah, I think maybe in the season 2, who knows if they'll bring in some other people like that. I just have yet to meet one that, couple of holy men from indigenous tribes that I've met and worked with. They talk about the Great Father, and they have no problem with me bringing Jesus and my God into the equation. And sometimes we sit down and talk. Do we pray to the same God? And we all just kind of smile, and we just don't know. We agree to disagree, that none of us are experts. None of us have all the answers, but we will all have the answer. We're going to be doing another version of your show one day in heaven and having this discussion and laughing about all the things we'll know then that we don't know now. But I have yet to meet anybody that doesn't at least acknowledge a higher power of love and light that is, guiding them through what it is they do when they're battling the dark forces.
That's a good answer. That's you got to it before I even got to it, talking about indigenous tribes and Native Americans, and even to go maybe as far as, and the only example I can come up with here is if you want to talk about someone who might have had experiences with all different religions, is someone like John Zaffis. To bring someone like John Zaffis onto a program with you all, who's experienced multiple ethnicities and beliefs, and bring him on with you, and someone who still does believe in Christ as well, and had those multiple experiences. I mean, that would be someone like that. Bishop Rita, someone like John Zaffis, what kind of an impact would someone like that have on your show?
Oh boy. Yeah, that would definitely open up a lot bigger area of, the different religions and things like that. I, like Shawn, I've met some people that were, they didn't specifically believe in Jesus. They thought he was a nice man and that was it, kind of thing. But at the end, when talking with them, it's quite clear that we all pray to one God. Mm-hmm. At least that's the way I took it. And as long as it's all going back to the Creator, who is our God and their God, they may think differently about it. And it was okay. We all have basically the same belief system. It's just splitting hairs on what you want to call them.
Minister Scott, is that a potential breaking point in harmony on a set if you bring in someone who maybe has a different outlook, and you're sitting around talking, and you have maybe somebody who is a pagan exorcist or maybe is of a different religious belief, and they say, well, Jesus was just a Gnostic priest or just a man, just a guy who had a great outlook, but in no way was he divine. In that minute, does that cleave the cast in half?
So I work with a lot of people, and my philosophy is I will never deny grace and love to any other human being. However, I guess I'm going to be the contrarian on this. In a set like this, I would have, personally, me, Scott, mm-hmm. would have a very difficult time with that, because I have seen other religion exorcist work, and I've only seen it make the problem worse. So I would be uncomfortable with that, but that doesn't mean I couldn't get over it and I wouldn't work with her, or I would judge someone or be like, I'm not being a part of this. Because I truly believe that the only answer for this is Jesus Christ. That's the only way. He's the only one who died for humanity. He's the only one who sent the Holy Spirit. He's the one with God in the beginning who created. He is God. So I would have a problem with that if the show, like, say there was a season 2 and I went into all these like other things, but also I'm not super closed-minded either, as much as that previous state may be. I'm still learning as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to judge anyone. The more allies in this fight you get, the better.
Okay. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to go from the show itself, and I want to take a look at the outside world. And one of the articles we had yesterday on Supernatural News was a little disturbing. And there's a trend out there, especially in South America, where we're seeing school children who are playing with Ouija boards. And it's happening in schools. And you're seeing stories about 36, I think the latest one was 36 school children going to a hospital because there's either mass hysteria, as they call it, mass panic, or what other holy people are calling mass possession, that are happening when these things are played with at schools. So I'm going to go around the room, so to speak, and I want to get your individual impressions. I'll start with Reverend Shawn. Why is it, in your opinion, that the chasm of evil is opening ever more? Or is it that we hear about it more. Which is it? Because it seems to me like, as I gather news for Wednesday shows, that it seems like it's a little of both to me, that we're seeing more and more evil as the days get, as they tick by. Reverend Shawn, which is it?
Well, one of those cases you speak about, I'm very familiar with, and it was a bunch of school children in Central America that all went into a coma state after playing with a Ouija board, and but they kept it very, very hush hush. I mean, foaming at the mouth, comatose states, all having to be rushed to the hospital. It wasn't the water, it wasn't bad food. They were all playing with a Ouija board. So, I mean, we all know what happened. So here's the thing. And we were talking about Jesus. I just have this clear picture in my mind right now. That new Jesus Ouija board's out. Has anybody seen that? It's the silliest looking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, we read the story about that a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. This is it. For me, this is it in a nutshell. Yes, the veil is about as thin as I've seen it in my whole life. Evil is everywhere now, and the reason is because humanity has gotten away from God, and we have allowed it to get to this point, and that's the sad thing about it. It's just we seem to have you find less and less people believing in God and believing in Jesus and following, having some type of religious belief system in their life, going to church, practicing turning the other cheek, praying for your enemies, forgiving, just being a good person, treating others as you would want them to treat you. And if you don't have to believe Jesus was the Son of God, but if you believe in Jesus, at the very least, a person, if they're not willing to admit to me, if you don't believe he was the Son of God, at the very least, you got to tell me that he's an ascended master and a great, 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 great prophet and a holy man. If you can't admit that, then I'm with Scott. I would have a problem with that. But I have yet to meet people like that too, unless they're out and out atheists. But I'm here to tell you, man, at the very end, we all talk to God, or God will talk to everybody at the very end. And I have more and more atheists and people that didn't believe every day calling me, asking me for help because they've said the wrong thing, done the wrong thing, been at the wrong place at the wrong time, and did something to invite these entities to attach to them. And now they're looking for some help from someone like me. So I guess I can also say eventually everyone's going to become a believer, because even if you don't believe in God, you're going to meet him one day. That's my take.
Minister Scott, I have to ask you this question. At the beginning of the program, you had said at one time you were an atheist, but then again, after an addiction issue, you turn to Christ. There's a point in everyone's life, I think, where we have that issue, where we have a crisis of faith. And then we eventually question our faith. And then we decide what it is we believe in. If there are people that are listening to the show that are maybe curious, maybe they're questioning their faith, or maybe they are just a diehard atheist and they decide they want to listen and maybe laugh at us. Let's put that out there. What would you say to somebody who's questioning their faith right now, and they're in this world that they're kind of wading through evil, and they see everything around them, and they see that it is a darker world right now? What would you say to them as far as faith goes, and what should they be doing in their journey?
I think, first off, the world right now, evil is so systemic, because everything is so interconnected. Satan is pulling the strings behind the systems of the world, the political system, politicians. There's mass distrust of authority, all that stuff. But also in America right now, we are experiencing the most spiritual time in American history. The problem is it's the most non-Christian related spiritual time in American history, and for good reason, because the American church has kind of dropped the ball in a lot of ways and hurt a lot of people. But I mean, that happens. But if you are someone out there who's wading through this and you're questioning, I want you to take what the Bible literally tells you to do. Literally, it says, question everything, cling to what is true. Like, at no point, I don't know where we got this idea that questioning faith or having doubts like God, it's like this forbidden thing. I don't believe exactly like I did when I first became a follower of Jesus. My views have drastically changed on a lot of things. And I would expect they will continue to evolve in my faith as I go through that. So don't stop seeking. God actually promises, you will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And so keep looking. If you're not satisfied with the answers you're getting, find someone who can give you the answers, because the greatest lie that the demonic has gotten the world to believe is that it's not real, or that it only affects certain people, when every day we're all subject to it. We're all subject to temptation at the very least. So keep seeking, keep asking. Jesus says, ask, seek, and knock, and in the Greek, that word can mean bang on the door, like answer me. And I promise you, as a guy who was going to commit suicide on my birthday the next day, I cried out to every god and goddess. For the first time in my life, I did not call out to Jesus. And the next day, Jesus literally showed up and answered me. Wow. So if you ask and seek and earn, sometimes God's got to make you get you to a point where you got to reach up to touch rock bottom. Yeah. But following Jesus won't make your life any easier, but it sure will make it a lot better. And so keep seeking, keep asking questions, keep looking for wisdom, because in our information saturated world, we are lacking wisdom in a profound way. And, only God gives wisdom. And so seek, ask, knock, look, ask questions, ask the hard questions. If you can't find the answer where you're at, find someone who will help you try. And I think as Christians, too, we need to be able to be humble. And one thing I do in my congregation is simply say, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and BS an answer and make up something, because this is too important. Your soul is a beautiful thing given to you by God. It's not something to just be treated, flippantly and just thrown away. And every human being, whether they believe in Jesus or not, is created in the image and likeness of God, and God is longing for them to come back to him. And so until everybody is brought back into the fold, we're not going to stop asking, seeking, and knocking. And so that's what I would encourage people to do. Just keep asking, keep looking. God is not hard to be found. It's just, he's not found in the places you would think that he might be.
Amen. That's great. That's great. Bishop Rita, if it's always darkest before the dawn, is this the darkest the time can get? And is the dawn around the corner?
Myself, I think I personally think that we are in end times. I do believe that. Okay. And I've said that on the set, and that I don't know if it'll ever come out, but it was said. And I know there were others there that felt the same way. I feel like I sometimes wonder if all this communication, all the internet, all the ways we have to communicate now, and the G5 and all this stuff, if this isn't part of the Antichrist. I really don't believe it's all being used for good. You see every day another way people are being deceived. And I personally, you were asking about spirit boards before. Mm-hmm. I personally think that one of the worst things they did is come out with movies about it, because that made everybody want it. And don't you know, I think that movie came out the first time, it was like November or something like that. And in December, Walmart sold like millions of these spirit boards. Yeah. Honestly, if there weren't any spirit boards and people didn't know about them, I don't think I'd have a job. I really don't. I've seen that much of that. It's always clean up on aisle 5. It's just, and people don't. There's all these other things now, like on the internet with these challenges and things like that. And none of them are good for the people. Why do they do it? But they do. And all of this has opened up more and more of the evil. And I truly believe that. I believe that it's darkest before the dawn. I don't think the dawn's here yet. And I'm not sure I'm going to be here long enough to see it. I will see it on the other side, I think. Okay. But I think we're going to be going through this darkness for quite a while yet.
Let me ask you this. You bring up an interesting point here, Bishop Rita. Is there such a thing as using a Ouija board safely, casting a white light of protection or casting some sort of protection around you and using that thing safely?
Personally, from what I've seen, if there is, nobody knows what it is because they're not doing it. There's a lot of people out there I haven't talked to, and I don't know. I just know that probably 90% of the people that I talk to that are in trouble, it started from that.
Okay.
And this whole thing on the board where it says, just say goodbye. I'm sorry. You've opened a portal. You cannot close that portal just by saying goodbye. It doesn't work that way. And they don't give them any other instruction to close or how to close. And even if they did, I don't know that they do it. I mean, they market it as a game. It is not a game, not at all. And so I personally am one of those that don't think these things should exist. That's just me.
Bishop Rita, do you feel that we as humans think we're more powerful than we actually are? Are we delusional in thinking that we have some sort of dominion over the spirit world?
Possibly. And I also think that people, we all have this thing where it's going to happen to you, but it would never happen to me. I believe in God. I believe in Christ. I believe in this. So therefore, nothing evil can come through there. That was not in the Bible. That didn't say that. Now you've opened that door and here we go. And now we've got a real battle on our hands. I just don't think we all have the correct information on this stuff. And there are people that, for whatever reason, feel like that they're not being affected by it. But you know what? I bet if you actually went down through their family and their friends and that, they're being attacked. Even if this person is not. I believe these things are insidious. They will get to, if they can't get to you, even for right now, maybe they'll go, oh, you know what? I like the way that they keep playing with this thing. So if I start attacking them, they may stop. So let's go and let's get their family over here and see what we can do over here to destroy and what we can do over here and over here. And before you know it, what you've done is you've actually opened up a super highway to everybody you love, everything you love. And that's what they're going to go after. And then they'll come after you afterwards. They're really good about waiting. Mm-hmm. They don't, if you invite something in, it doesn't mean you're going to see it right away. It will wait until it will do the most damage. Yeah. That's when it will show up.
And the battle between good and evil is eternal. It's not like it just stops all of a sudden and it's never going to come back. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. As we begin to wrap up today's show, I kind of want to go around the room one more time and just kind of and ask you guys. I know we've talked about the potential of season 2, and of course we'll find out in the coming weeks whether there's a season 2 coming. Again, we're wishing, hoping, and praying that happens. I'll ask you guys as we go around the room. I'll start with you, Bishop Rita. What would be the one? If you had one change and one thing you'd like to see improved in a season 2, what would it be?
I would like to see if there's a way, and I think there is a way they could do it because they were really good about keeping the action going. Mm-hmm. I really think if they could focus on one story per episode, you would have a lot more information about how this happened and what these people went through. And I think it could do nothing but it would just tell so much more about why this was so horrific, how did we get here? What did you really have to do to get rid of it all? You saw 10 minutes of what we did. Yeah. There's so much more and so many more cans of worms that opened. So in myself, just speaking for myself, and I loved the show. Don't get me wrong. Oh yeah, I loved it. Mm-hmm. I really liked it the way it is. I just wish that there would be a little bit more time to develop each story. I think it would just come across to the viewer just how devastating this story was to that person's life, and what happened. How we were able to, by the grace of God, take that away.
Okay. Reverend Shawn, what one thing would you change for a season 2 coming up?
Oh gosh, honestly, I feel bad that I don't have really an answer for you on that one. I really, really like the show the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that that's not my talent, my forte as a show creator or a producer or anything like that. I trust them. There may or may not be any changes, and if we go to a season 2 and there's changes, I'll embrace that, and I just trust them, and I know that they know what they're doing, regardless of what changes they may or may not make.
Is
and if they don't make any, I'm good.
Is there anyone you'd add to the cast that you know of?
I don't know if they want to. You can. I heard through a grapevine.
Okay.
I'm going to get hate mail for this. That everybody and anybody you can imagine that's in this field or closely associated to the deliverance ministry field or exorcism field was reached out to and interviewed in the process of putting this cast together. Are we, are we the? I don't know. The cast is the cast, and somehow
this is just a personal wish. It has nothing to do with any rumors or anything like that. If you had your druthers, if it was up to you,
I'd like to see Jesus.
That'd be something.
I'd like to see Jesus come on the set and hang out with us, and
I think you get an all-time high rating if you could pull that off.
Yeah, it's just like I tell people all the time when I do my show, I'm waiting for the day that I can actually get a ghost or somebody from the other side of the veil to sit down and be interviewed, because there's people out there that are never going to believe in what it is we do and believe in the afterlife and demons and angels and ghosts and all that. But it's very, very, very real. And I just tell people, be careful, because, you hear people all the time. You just want to, I'm not a violent man, but you want to pick something heavy up and bludgeon somebody when you hear them say, I would rather, Jesus wasn't real, and I would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. Just be careful. That's my advice before we go, is be careful what you say and what you do. And if they could get Jesus to be a cast member next season, that would be great. Otherwise than that, I love the show. If they make changes or not, I know that they know best, and I trust them.
Okay. Let's wrap it up with stuff you got going on coming up here in the future, Minister Scott.
I'm just going to continue to be whatever happens.
All right.
And so that's all I got going on.
All right.
Can I answer the question about changes I'd make real quick?
Yep.
Other than that, I thought it was a really good show. I think I'm the youngest person on the show, and that's not an insult to anybody else on the show. I don't even know how I got there, to be truthful. But here we are. But from the younger folks I speak to and my friends that have watched it, and other people, they would rather have more of the roundtable discussion. And a reenactment at very specific key points, like just a scene or a blip here. While we're telling the story, and then we could discuss various topics. That I think a lot of people would be a lot more interested in that. But if they don't change anything about it, I mean, I think it's fine just the way it is. It's just like maybe extend each story to an entire episode would be a better way to encompass it all. But I think the roundtable discussion, we had so many really good discussions about so many different topics that they didn't include and won't be included, and nobody will ever know but us. But and maybe that's a special treasure for us. But in the meantime, whether there is a season 2 or not, or whatever, I'm just going to keep serving Jesus. And whenever he calls me into this, to walk into the darkness to help somebody, I'm going to obey that call. So that's what I'm going to do.
Right on. Yeah. To expound on your point there, Minister Scott, I found myself more intrigued, like when you would bring up the history of that Hebrew character, I was sucked in more to the specific things and the knowledge that the three of you had, more so than watching the reenactment. I found myself tuning out a little bit to the reenactment because I knew I was probably going to get something a little more over the top than reality. and knowing, but that's just me and knowing from 17 years of doing a show that I know that what I'm seeing on the screen is probably not what happened in reality with the three of you. But to me, it was the actual you telling the story. And then on top of that, it was the actual knowledge that you brought to the table. That to me was the most interesting thing. So that's my perspective in that. Bishop Rita, what do you have coming up in the future?
Well, it's really exciting. Because of all this, I'll make this really short. After the first show came out, one of my friends had polled all her friends that watched it, and they hated it.
Really?
And they hated it. Yeah, they said, oh, well, you did a good job, but hated the reenactments, hated this, hated that about it. And I mean, I'm just like devastated. She said, well, I just thought you'd want to know. And I was just like devastated. And I went to my guides that night and I said, why, if this is so bad, why did you want me to do this? And I heard, you will understand. The next day, the very next day, I started getting emails from all these women going, thank God you're on that show. There's women that do this. I've been trying. I feel like I've got this calling. I've been trying to get in. I keep being stymied. How did you get through? And I went, that's it. That's why you wanted me to do this. So I have since started a school of exorcism for women.
There you go.
And when the course is done and over and they pass with flying colors, I'm going to ordain them. And they will have the backing of the church, and God will have more ministers in this field.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm going to be doing.
That's awesome. That's great. Reverend Shawn, I know you have plenty of things going on with Ghost Be Gone, but expound. Tell me what's going on with you.
Well, I'm in the seminary, and if anybody knows what that's like, I am constantly 24/7 in classes and studies and quizzes and tests and lectures, and it's all good because I love God, I love Jesus. So it's all right now for me just the seminary. But I have my first book has been out for a couple of years, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And then I just recently came out with God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry 2. Mm-hmm. Both those books you can get at the website or on Amazon. I teach a Introduction to Spiritual Warfare course that you can enroll in off of my website. And other than that, man, I'm just loving life. And I thank you so much. It was nice to see your face again today.
Good to see yours.
To get caught up with you and some of your good and bad issues that you've struggled with, and I'm glad you're doing much better. And I just thank you for having me on today. It was a lot of fun, and I love seeing Rita and Scott again, and that was really cool. And I'm looking forward to when you have the other three cast members on, and I will be right there listening.
Absolutely. We'll put links up to your website and for the books on the description of the show so people can check those out as well. So
very cool.
I want to thank all three of you for being on today. I even though Bishop Rita, you might have had some complaints about the reenactments, I thoroughly enjoyed the show, all 6 episodes. I'm hoping and praying that you guys get a second season, because I really do believe that the show has some legs and it should continue on. And I believe there's some good lessons there. I really do believe there's some good lessons there. And it if anything, there needs to be a little bit of a tide stemming, if you will, in some of the things that are going on out there in the world. So I want to thank all three of you for being on today.
Thank you, Howard.
God bless you, brother.
God bless you as well.
God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. I want to thank my guests for this week, Reverend Shawn Wittington, Minister Scott Jonson, and Bishop Rita Strugala, for being on the program. Again, folks, check out the Legion of Exorcists if you haven't had a chance yet. 6 episodes are out there right now. It's available on Max. You may think maybe the Discovery Plus app. A lot of that is being offloaded from the Discovery Plus app onto Max. If you don't have Max, go out there and get it. It's the old HBO Max. Has now been reformatted and put into the app called Max, which is a combination of HBO Max and the Discovery Plus app. They've kind of taken and put that all into one app now. So also Ghost Adventures has been put onto the Max app as well if you're looking for paranormal programming, and a lot of the Travel Channel paranormal shows have been put onto Max as well. So a lot of that can be found now on the Max app. If you had the Discovery Plus app, you'll find that a lot of that stuff has migrated over to Max. So if you don't have Max right now, we'll put a link in the description of the show to give you the opportunity to go over and check out the Max app and download it and see for yourself what Max has. A lot of entertainment, a lot of fine entertainment from Warner Brothers Discovery over on the Max app. So check it out for yourself. A couple of thank yous for this week that I want to throw out there. One for Mally Fox, who's really stepped up the last few weeks and not only just come in a pinch and filled in for Beer City Bruiser, but done a fantastic job. And I want to thank Mally for coming in and filling in as co-host for the last few weeks, especially this week, and doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Mally, for that. I greatly appreciate you and love you, and thank you so much for being a great team member here at Darkness Radio and helping us out. Mint Mobile, thank you so much for being a good sponsor. And again, folks, to take advantage of such a great deal, I can't stress to you how much Mint Mobile is such a great phone company. I myself have Mint Mobile, and I'm using it right now. Great 5G service. You can get talk, text, and streaming and internet on your phone. 5G, folks, for just $15 unlimited right now. If you go to mintmobile.com/darkness, get that deal right now. And I've got it on my iPhone. I'm going all over town with it, unlimited and uninterrupted. That's the best way to put it. And it is great. Try it out right now for yourself. mintmobile.com/darkness. $15 a month. You can't beat it. You just can't beat it. Folks, I want to remind you to take care of yourself and each other. Do something good for somebody this weekend, but also do something good for yourself. Enjoy the weekend. Go out and have some fun. But also, if you see somebody in need that also needs your assistance, go out and help them as well. Maybe you have a neighbor out there who can't do yard work on their own, or maybe you have a neighbor out there that needs some help or some assistance with some shopping or something. Lend a hand, but at the same time, go out and have some fun as well. We've got great shows lined up for the next few weeks here on Darkness Radio. On True Crime Tuesday next week, Barbara Butcher will be with us, a former New York City, I'm trying to think of how I put this. She wasn't a coroner, but involved in the death system in New York City. We'll put it that way, for all intents and purposes. She's got a very interesting book out there, and we'll be talking to Barbara Butcher on Tuesday, and much more. Boy, we have got some shows coming up for you here in the month of July here on Darkness Radio, and I hope that you're enjoying what you're hearing here on the show. Drop me a line, tim@darknessradio.com, and let me know how you're enjoying the shows. And I've gotten some great emails from people who have guests that they want to hear from, and I'm getting your emails, even if I don't respond to them. I'm getting your guest suggestions, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. So, and I am trying to reach out and get some of these people on the show. Keep them coming, folks. And also your Parashare suggestions or your Parashare stories. I want to get those stories in from you. I know a lot of people think I'm sitting on Parashare stories. I'm not, folks. I'm not. There's two ways to get them to me. tim@darknessradio.com. Type it out, send it to me. I want to air them on Wednesdays. And also, if you go to darknessradioshow.com, our website, you can click on that blue button on the right-hand side. Send us a voice note. It's just 2 minutes in length. You get a window of 2 minutes. If you need more time than that, click on that blue button again. Send us part 2, and I'll stitch that together. We'll play it on Wednesdays, and we'll weigh in on it if you want. Otherwise, we'll just play your story. The world wants to hear your beautiful voice. So send us your story that way, or just type it out the old-fashioned way, and we'll air it right here on Wednesdays on Supernatural News in our Parashare segment. Again, we want to hear your stories, folks. It's not just about us presenting the supernatural and paranormal to you. We want to hear your stories as well. So by all means, get it to us in one way or the other. Email it to us, or your lovely voices. We want to hear your lovely voices as well. Got to ask you guys something. Is there interest in you seeing our faces? Do you want to see a video version of Darkness Radio? I know Audio Boom has stressed to us that they Want to see a video version of Darkness Radio? We've thought about it, but we're a podcast. We've started in radio. Radio's where we're comfortable. But do you want to see a video version? You can weigh in by emailing me as well, tim@darknessradio.com, or weigh in our social media. Do you want to see a video version of maybe Supernatural News on Wednesdays? Or do you want to see a video version of our interviews where I sit down and interview our different guests? Let us know. We'd like to hear from you. That'll do it for now. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for being a faithful listener of Darkness Radio and True Crime Tuesday. Again, we can't stress how much we enjoy having you as a listener, how much we love having you as a listener, and how much we love you. Continue downloading those shows. Continue listening to them on a weekly basis. Don't hold on to them for too long because, again, we want to get credit for those listens and for those downloads. Don't let them sit in your queue for too long. Listen to them every couple of weeks, and let's get credit for those shows together, all right? We'll see you next week. Thanks again for listening to the best in paranormal programming. This is Darkness Radio.